Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. The National Sleep Foundation recommends 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night for adults between the ages of 18 to 64. Yet more than 1/3 of adults aren't getting the recommended amount of sleep, and between 10 and 30% of adults struggle with insomnia. A host of studies and reports have linked insufficient sleep to depression, ADHD, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and Alzheimer's. In 2014, the CDC labelled sleep deprivation a public health epidemic, with over 70 million adults suffering from a sleep disorder. On today's episode, I interviewed sleep and rest expert Amanda Slinger to explore the topic. Amanda has a medical background and over 20 years of experience working in organisations on the critical role that rest and sleep play in optimising individual and collective performance. Amanda, thank you so much for making the time to come on the podcast.
Oh, absolute pleasure, Nick.
No, I really appreciated it. And I think both times I've had a chat to you, I've really enjoyed it, and also love learning about sleep. I think I was saying to you just before we started recording, I think the area that everyone in the world can probably use more help with. And we just, we all know how healthy it is for us, but we don't do enough of it. So I think, really excited to have this chat.
Fantastic. It's great to hear you've got that view.
Yeah, definitely. So before we get into it, can you give a bit of a background on yourself, the work you do, and just how you came to be doing what you're now doing?
Okay, well, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough going on. So I guess my working career, I started as a registered nurse. It's strange because I've sort of done this pirouette, not such a pivot, but a pirouette right back to healthcare. But I started my career as a registered nurse, and would have been within 6 months of graduating, I found myself in a remote mining community working as sister in charge of the hospital there, Parabadoo, such a cool name. And it was a closed mining community, so only people who worked on the mine site or services that serviced the community were allowed to live in the town. And it was a fantastic community. We relied on each other for everything: support, friendship, sports. It was just incredible. I was the local ballet instructor. I don't know how I got roped into that, but I did. I was the X-ray operator. So it was a really exciting time, and I just learned so much. But through all that, I also saw how many work-related injuries were coming in the door of the emergency department, and it shocked me. And I just saw that link between the poor sleep, fatigue, and safety. And I then started studying a grad dip in OHS. Did it remotely, and back then that was even before the internet. That's showing you how old I am. So it was crazy. But I just absolutely loved the work I did, the emergency work. We were delivering babies, we were doing minor surgeries. It was so much, but I just wanted to be in that preventative space. I just wanted to stop the suffering. And there was one night when we had a fatality, and it involved one of the fathers who lived in the town, and I taught his kids ballet. So, you're there supporting the family with their grief, but you're also grieving yourself. So for me, that was just so gut-wrenching, and I really wanted to do something different. So I jumped into that occ health and safety space. After a few years in Africa, I came back and worked in mining again, and I've pretty much spent most of my career in mining construction. And I worked as an occ health nurse on a mine site. And in those roles, that's a FIFO mine site, so fly in, fly out. And in those roles, you are your nurse, your counsellor, your support person, and a lot of people, they share a lot with you. Everything from, my dog just died, or my, wife just left me. So a lot of mental health issues, I saw a lot of mental health issues rising. And again, this link between poor sleep and mental health really struck me. So way back then, I wanted to do something in the sleep space. I then went on and started my first company, Industrial Safe, which I still run today, although in a sort of more reduced capacity, and that's a risk management business in the health and safety space. And I then thought back to, I've got to get this sleep program up and running. So I founded a second company called Fluoro. And it's funny how things go. I then got distracted delivering online courses for all my clients and forgot all about building my own program. And it was pre-COVID, and I just thought, I really need to push the button on this thing, and started my third company with the name of Sleep Spot. So there was no confusion or diversion around what I was going to do. And yeah, slowly built this sleep program that I'm now providing to organisations. And it's essentially employee recharge program where we look at educating and supporting and engaging employees to prioritise and optimise their sleep. There are so many sleep challenges that we're facing globally, and in Australia the stats aren't fantastic. So I think there's a great need, and my desire is for companies to take on a program like this as part of their onboarding. So it should be setting aside, other fatigue or fitness for work related subjects. So I like a lot of public speaking as well on rest and sleep, because my sort of area of expertise is both rest and sleep. It's what we do in daylight hours in terms of resting that also supports sleep. I've got another sort of program I'm trying to get into teens and young children around optimising their sleep, because we don't learn about sleep in school. That's not one of our our pillars of education. We learn about diet and nutrition and exercise, but sleep's missed off the program. So if we can help to educate young children, we can help our teens to be more resilient with better mental health outcomes. And if you have great habits in childhood, they'll come through to teen years and then into adulthood. So there's a lot of work ahead of me, but I'm really excited.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And you've done a lot of different things and a lot to juggle. But I think it's amazing the mission that you're on. And yeah, like I was saying at the beginning, couldn't be more needed. And I guess that's interesting how you're saying, it's like mental health. We're not educated on sleep, yet, we all from a very young age know we should be getting 8 hours or around 8 hours or more sleep. But then we don't really get any further education from that. We don't really take it seriously or look into it. How much do we need to know? And do you think it would make a big difference if we were educated properly about this from a young age? Would that sort of help a lot later in life?
Oh, I really believe so, Nick. I really do. Young kids are sponges for knowledge, and if you make the learning engaging and tell a story through it, I think it'll really land well. And if we can teach them at a young age, they can then take that through to that teenage years when they really need it. Teens have got so many challenges. I've got a teen, 15-year-old, and there are a lot of challenges for them. So I believe there's a lot that we can do. And I think generally the adult population, we have an idea about the importance of sleep, but most people don't know the half of it, Nick. And I think when we truly dive into and explore what sleep does for us, it's really quite powerful, that message. And then when we start to lean into all those things that sleep does for me, what is it that I'm going to hang my hat on? Why am I going to prioritize my sleep tonight? So for me, I really want my brain to be functioning really well. We're all aging, and for me, that's my intrinsic value that I hang on sleep. I've got lots of them, but that's one I always go to. So I think when you've got that background of knowledge of why we need to sleep and what it can do for us, and the impact of a poor night's sleep, I think that's powerful for people. And the stats are really, really strong on people's need for knowledge in this area. 74% of Australians actually want to know more about sleep, and 1 in 2 Australians want to actually know how to get better sleep. So they're really positive stats.
That's really strong statistics. And
Mm.
how many people are getting enough sleep, and how many people, have a healthy relationship with sleep? Are there rough figures on that, in companies, in schools? Is it something that's a fairly high number?
Yeah, I love how you've got a positive spin on that. How many people are getting sleep?
Yeah.
I can tell you how many aren't.
How many aren't? Tell me how many aren't. Yeah.
You can do the maths on the delta on that. So, in terms of, I think of it in three main areas. There are, diagnosed sleep disorders, which you've got insomnia, which is 3 months or more of symptoms. Used to be 6 months, now it's 3 months. It's a long time to be without good sleep. So sleep disorders, medically diagnosed sleep disorders, are insomnia, sleep apnea, parasomnias, restless leg syndrome. There's a whole heap of them. So there's 1 in 5 Australians, and these are Australian statistics, 1 in 5 have a diagnosed sleep disorder. But when you look at that 1 in 5, not all of them will be receiving treatment. Treatments are not always that attractive. And when someone's been diagnosed and they aren't really interested in doing the treatment, they won't go back and revisit it. But I really encourage people to keep going back and getting second opinion, or just looking at what else is emerging, because technologies and treatments for sleep disorders, it's an exciting space. So sleep disorders is one thing. And then, of course, there's all the people who are undiagnosed. And I think there's a bigger number of people who are undiagnosed having sleep disorders. And sorry, I've just got to come on through.
Oh, go for it.
Sick 15-year-old. So yeah, I really question how many people are undiagnosed, and that's another area of work that in our recharge program we work upfront on. Do you think you might have an undiagnosed sleep disorder? And really encourage people to go and seek a diagnosis. And in that space, GPs have got so much to cover. They don't know a huge amount about sleep, and also, what sleep specialists there are to refer people on to. So we talk a little bit about that as well in our program. So there's, sleep disorders, and then there's just sleep problems. So sleep problems, I'm sure you can relate to this. I didn't sleep well last night, even though I'm a sleep expert. So these are anything from, having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, waking up too frequently during the night, waking up too early, having daytime symptoms of fatigue. So not necessarily insomnia, like 3 months of symptoms, but occasionally, and it still stuffs up our day. So that's sort of the second big bucket: sleep, diagnosed sleep disorders. Then there's sleep disorders, sleep problems. And then the one that isn't spoken about a lot, and I do not have any metrics on this, and I would love to, but I think this is the bigger bucket, and this is people who displace their sleep. So people who are squeezing the amount of time or the opportunity that we give to sleep. And this is really, really significant. So you've got people who are working 2 jobs, or people who've got families. I mean, it can be anyone, binging on Netflix or your favorite TV show, social media scrolling, looking at the news, working on projects late into the evening. So it's just, and that impact is huge. So they're the buckets that I work in terms of how big a problem we have.
But 1 in 5 people having a sleep disorder is enormous. I didn't know that statistic. That's crazy.
Yeah. And in terms of sleep problems, you've got, I think 64% of Australians have at least one sleep problem. So that was falling asleep, having trouble staying asleep, etc. And around 45% have 2 sleep problems. So it's significant. And it's a stressful world that we live in, and there's so many things that impact our sleep and our ability to sleep, whether we want to try and sleep or whether we're just not prioritizing sleep.
Yeah. I was just thinking with my sleep, I normally don't have trouble falling asleep. I often wake up, 2, 3 times during the night. Is it normal to wake up during the night? Are you ideally meant to sleep the whole way through? I'm just personally interested in, how that works.
Yeah.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at Nick Bracks. I really appreciate your ongoing support.
Yeah. I think it's a fantastic question. I'm glad you raised it because so many people think that they aren't sleeping well because they wake up a few times in the night. It's absolutely normal to wake up during the night. Where we need to be cautious is how frequently we wake up and whether we can get back to sleep promptly.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, that's good to know then. And not jumping on your phone or doing something to stimulate yourself when you wake up.
Yeah, and look, often it is a case that we're so busy. We're so busy in our daylight hours that I think of it. You can relate to this being an actor. I think past life actor.
Yeah.
I think of this our life as a stage, and sort of during the day, there are all these actors on the stage, getting their face in front of the audience and their voice in front of the audience. And in the wings, we've got all these other actors who are like, and their thoughts and worries and concerns that aren't being heard. And the first opportunity that they actually have to be heard is when we put our head on our pillow at night. And often we're so exhausted that we just fall asleep. And it's when we wake up in the night, and that's when all these thoughts and ideas and worries come to us, and it's very hard to switch them off. So it's very important that we do give ourselves time in daylight hours, and I'm really strong on the daylight hours, to just let those thoughts and worries come to us. Like I said to you earlier before we jumped on the recording, I do a lot of driving up and down from East Fremantle in Western Australia to Margaret River. It's a 3-hour drive. I go up and down at least once a week. And in that drive, I listen to podcasts, but I don't listen the whole way. The first half of the trip, I'm there with my thoughts and let things flow. So I think that's a big problem for many people. It's that we just don't know how to switch off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so hard to, and we, like you're saying, we can be lying in bed on our phone, still sending emails, watching movies, doing all these things that are stimulating us just before we go to bed, which is not ideal. How many hours are we actually meant to get per night? And I think it's interesting, like what you were talking about before, where a lot of people are working, 2 jobs or trying to cram more in. And I think there's a lot of misinformation as well, where you'll hear different successful people talking about, or motivational speakers saying, you just got to push harder. I only sleep 4 hours a night and all that kind of stuff, which I think can be, damaging to people to be misled in that way.
Completely. And I hope that there's more people, or a growing population of people who are recognizing that that's just a load of BS. And you think about Elon Musk, who's he only sleeps, I don't know what he said on the Joe Rogan show, X number of hours a night sleep, and look what he's achieved. But my reply to that is, well, what could he have achieved had he have had 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night? So there's the other side of it. So in terms of what we should be sleeping, the recommendations globally, whether you're in Australia or the States, it's 7 to 9 hours for adults. And something that's really interesting, and when I say to people, so how many hours a night do you think you need to sleep? And they're like, oh, between 7 and 9. And okay, so, and for you? And it goes, yeah, well, sometimes I get 7 and then sometimes I might get 9. And I'm like, that's not how it works. 7 to 9 range. It's like somewhere in there is your ideal every night. And of course, depending on what we've done during the day and the amount of stress we've had and so on, we might need a bit more, a bit less. But there's this range. You might only need 7 hours a night, Nick, but I used to need 8, now I need about 7.5 as I get older. And that's what I should aim for most nights. And of course, we've got beautiful, wonderful, exciting lives to lead. It's not always going to be 7.5, but that's my aim most nights of the week. So yeah, and it's just having a real think about, well, what is your number? And I don't think a lot of people really think about that unless you're using, a sleep tracker, which so many people are doing. They're using metrics to measure steps and sleep quality and so on. More and more people are doing that, but there's still a lot of people who've got no idea how many hours a night they really hum on each day.
That's interesting. Yeah. And would you say then, as what in addition to that, so it's getting a similar amount each night, and then is it having a similar routine where you're going to bed at similar times, you're getting up at a similar time, having that consistency, is that important as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think you know what you need to do. Yeah, it's definitely, we've got the circadian rhythm. It's a rhythm. It wants rhythm. It works best with a rhythm, and that's a rhythm is something that's regular. So, waking up at the same time is the most important point in your day. The time you go to sleep is important, but if you've got to move one of them, move the time you go to sleep, but don't move the time that you wake up. And when I say that, I sleep in maybe half an hour on a weekend. This morning I had really bad sleep last night, and which is not common for me, but it happens. And I slept in an extra 20 minutes this morning. That's okay. But trying to wake up within 30 minutes of that normal wake up time is so important, because your circadian rhythm, which is what drives our sleep, needs that regularity.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting, because I think it's something that a lot of us know about but don't follow, and it's just important to focus on that.
So something else which is really important to know around that sleep regularity that might help your listeners really focus in on waking up at the same time each day is that, we've got the 24-hour clock, but our circadian rhythm actually runs for slightly longer than 24 hours, which is, I think it's remarkable. It's like, why does that happen? But it does. So without the cues of sunlight and food and exercise that help to keep the timing of our circadian rhythm, our rhythm would shift later and later. So, my teen, if I allow him to sleep in each day, his circadian rhythm will shift. So that means that we will want to go back to bed later, wake up later, and it'll keep shifting. So on average, the circadian rhythm is around about 24.2 hours. And so it's not a lot, but it's interesting to know, and that might help people just go, yeah, I do need to wake up in the morning at the same time, or whenever you wake up, if you're a shift worker, wake up at the same time.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast and want to learn more, I've released my first book, Move Your Mind, How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life, where I talk about my own journey with mental health and share tips from experts on how to maintain a healthy mindset. You can buy the book on Amazon or through my website at nickbracks.com/book. Yeah, definitely. No, definitely interesting to know. Well, a lot of this podcast centers around mental health. How big is the connection between our mental health and sleep?
Enormous. I believe with all that sleep does for our bodies right now, mental health, that the mental health component is huge. REM sleep, we have REM sleep throughout the night, but in the second half of the night is when we have most REM sleep. And it's in REM sleep that we really get this recovery of our mental health. And we know that mental health and sleep has what they call a bidirectional relationship, which is really interesting in that, if you have poor sleep, you're at an increased risk of a mental health challenge. And that's significant to know. So, we all know what it's like when we've had a poor night's sleep, we're a little bit grumpier. Just ask my 15-year-old this morning. But also, I don't think that there's any mental health disorder that isn't also associated with poor sleep. So there's that bi-directional relationship, the chicken or the egg type of thing. So it is incredibly important. And when people are experiencing, whether it's emotional challenges, stress, just to know that a great night's sleep is the best way you can start tomorrow.
Yeah. Which is, yeah, and the natural tendency when you are stressed or going through an emotional challenge, mental health issues, whatever it is, it often goes the other way where you just can't get yourself to relax and sleep. But that's the ironic thing. It's the thing you need the most, like you're saying there. So important to be aware of that and just have that front of mind when you are going through those kind of periods that, the sleep is actually going to be one of the key things to allow you to then work through, all of these different situations we go through.
Completely. What I recommend everyone does is to find at least 3 tools that they can lean on to help them unwind, whether it's trying to fall asleep or it's just during the day and they're feeling stressed. And it doesn't need to be meditation. I'm absolutely crap at meditation, but finding something which helps you unwind, because it's times when you're stressed or you can't fall asleep that you can really lean on that. And you don't want it to be a crisis situation and you're going to have to learn in that point in time how to unwind. And what I find with the people that I speak to about sleep is that we're really getting out of touch with our parasympathetic nervous system, which is that rest and digest state, that we're so focused on doing so much in our day and being busy that sort of fight or flight response is always active, but we're not really engaging that parasympathetic nervous system frequently enough. And I think of it like a muscle, a muscle wastes away unless we use it. So having some tools, some strategies to lean on that is, and everyone is different. As I said, for me, it's not meditating. I've got a terrific app that I use at night when I can't fall asleep, and it's called Nothing Much Happens. And it's a podcast, and it's this Canadian woman who's got this lovely voice, and she has these stories which are absolutely nothing much happens, but it's enough to lay a path for my mind to follow. Otherwise, my mind's sort of planning and thinking and strategizing and solving problems. So that's my go-to. But again, I don't want to lean on that solely, because when I went camping last year, I didn't have access to the internet. So then how do I, listen to my podcast? I could have downloaded it, but I wasn't that smart beforehand. So making sure that you've got at least 3 strategies or tools that work for you is really important.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's great, and simple advice that anyone can implement. So final question here. What about sleep and performance? We're talking a little bit about this before we started recording. How much of an effect does sleep have on our performance, whether that be at work or anything else?
Yeah. Well, it's, I think, the center of the program that we have with our employee recharge program. And we say that the best way to predict how well you or your team is going to perform today can be asked in one simple question. That is, how did you sleep last night? And that it's the most reliable predictor of performance. And performance, when I talk about performance, it's employee performance, everything from, your energy levels to creativity to memory. It's your mood, it's how many errors you make, it's decision-making, problem solving. Performance covers your health and well-being. We've already talked about mental health, but it's also your heart health and your brain health. Immune function is really important. Sleep impacts immune function, blood sugar regulation. And, my career started with safety performance. And, when you're poorly slept, your risk-taking behavior increases, which is really interesting. Of course, reaction times are slower, fatigue is increased, accident rates and severity go up. And then, even leadership performance. This is one of the talks that I deliver to organisation. It's really looking at, how leaders, it's about setting the tone at the top, because, what they say and do about sleep impacts how well their subordinates sleep. And you touched on this earlier with, famous people or leaders around the world. If they say that they get by on whatever 5 or 6 hours of sleep, people listen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, and there's so much that leaders can be doing to support sleep. But yeah, leadership performance, leaders, charisma is affected by sleep.
Yeah.
They're to communicate and talk. And then organisational performance, you've got turnover of people engaged, presenteeism and absenteeism. There's just so much related. So performance, my gosh.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is huge. It's huge.
Yeah. And where can people go if they want to learn more about what you're doing, your program, anything else? We'll put this in the show notes, but where can our listeners go if they want to learn more?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I have a phone and I have an email address. So yeah, I'd love for people to just reach out, pick up the phone and talk to me. But yeah, of course, I have a website, which is www.sleepspot.com.au, and yeah, LinkedIn, a little bit on Instagram, but mostly LinkedIn.
Okay, great. Well, we'll put the links in the show notes. So anyone listening, make sure to check those out. So we finish with every episode with 5 closing questions. So the first one here is, what is your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
Oh, I love it. It would have to be Rottnest Island. So yeah, I live in Western Australia. Have you been Rottnest?
I've never been. I've seen photos. So it's like on my, probably number 1 on my list. So my girlfriend's Canadian. When we go back to Australia, I want to take her there.
Oh, well, make sure you come and visit us. So Rottnest, it's like the Greek islands, or better. And it's an island off the coast of WA. And I spent 2 weeks in summer and 2 weeks in winter each year as a kid, going there for holidays. And you can only take bikes, you can't take cars. So it's just this idyllic lifestyle. My best friend and I we used to just ride around the island with our fishing rods and a bucket with some tackle. We rarely had any bait. It was just generally foil and some, crusty bread. And we'd go fishing and exploring the bays. And it was just, yeah.
I love that.
Idyllic.
such a good memory. What do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
There's a lot in that. There's a lot in that. I believe it's the constant pursuit of more. Not being present, not being happy with the now, always looking to the future. There's a brilliant quote that I often use from Dolly Parton, and she said, "Don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life." And it's this putting off happiness until fill in the space with whatever it is. I finish this project, I get a new job, the kids leave primary school, whatever it is. And we're just so busy, we're overcommitting. And I think we generalizing, of course, have unrealistic expectations about our time. We've got a lot of time, but we just have unrealistic expectations around what we can achieve in a day without running ourselves into the ground.
Oh, I think it's such a great answer and so relevant to, like you're saying, most of us. I think it's just the world we live in. So you have to make a conscious effort to just make the most of what's in front of you rather than always looking to the future. So I love that answer. What's your personal definition of happiness?
Wow. How do I define happiness? I think the simple answer would be, yeah, whatever makes me feel good. That it's, I think, a lot to do with my relationships, with other people and my place in the world. Yeah, I'm happy when I have a sense of belonging and connectedness and community.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm loved. Laughter makes me happy. And I think it's also, well, I know, not I think, it's very much around how close I am to the natural world, and how much time I spend in it and how active I am in it. I go to the beach most days and swim in the ocean, and yeah, every day it's one of the ways that I unwind is immersing myself in nature in an active way.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think more people need to do that, and I think it's such an important one. What are you most afraid of?
Apart from sharks.
Apart from sharks, including sharks.
Gosh, I think it's related to what we've spoken about, just in terms of, I think how easy and attractive it is to be disconnected from each other and from our natural world. I love technology. I've got two companies which are built on tech, but I'm challenged, and I'm also concerned with how to keep the balance of, technology and dopamine versus nature and oxytocin. They both feel good hormones, but yeah, dopamine and technology, it's such a strong one. And I'm just afraid how much we're disconnecting from each other and the natural world. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on a positive note, what are you most proud of?
Proud of my family, and I think the working life I've created. I've got a portfolio career of three companies. I love the change that I'm looking to make in the world. And I think the diverse work that I do, 1 minute I'm working with a full character animation creator, I'm working with a script writer, I might be working with a mine manager. So yeah, I think I'm very blessed in the flexibility and yeah, the richness of the work that I do. It's varied. And also I get to take 2 months off every year. That's just I don't compromise on that. So December,
Yeah,
January, I exit stage left. So I'm proud
very
of
important.
that. Really proud of that.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for making the time. I've learned a lot in this, and I'm sure our listeners will, and love the work you're doing. And I think it's such an important mission to educate as many people as we can about sleep. So yeah, really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks so much, Nick. And yeah, thanks for doing the podcast. It's a great podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks to Amanda Slinger for joining me today for Move Your Mind. Also, a huge thank you to those of you listening. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more or connect with me personally, visit www.nickbracks.com or send me a DM on Instagram at nickbracks. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.